traveling around this country, I see his vigor, I see his energy, I see his passion every single day.
As part of the customary gathering between the outgoing and incoming First Ladies, Melania Trump turned down Jill Biden's offer to tea at the White House, shocking the globe. On the contrary, she expressed her disdain with them with such intensity that everyone wondered what she knew that the rest of us didn't. Was their relationship directly related to their house, or is there some other hidden truth about what happened between them? Come along as we contrast the mansions owned by the two families outside of the White House and dissect the events that have fueled the animosity between them. Although it appears alarming, this departure from convention is not new. Prior to their departure from the White House in 2001, President and First Lady Trump did not extend an invitation to Joe and Jill Biden, who would succeed them. This was the first deviation from a long-standing American practice of handing over power, in which the outgoing president traditionally greets and accompanies the incoming leader to the White House and the North Portico. The Capitol. Most people thought the Trumps were just upset because they didn't win re-election. The Bidens were greeted by White House Chief Usher Timothy Harleth, rather than the President and First Lady. After working in Washington, D.C.'s Trump International Hotel, Timothy was appointed in the year 2001. The world was taken aback, but none anticipated that the same circumstances would transpire so quickly with the same people. And this time, an invitation was issued, only to be rejected. After much speculation and analysis, the media and experts came to the following conclusion. The Trumps were unhappy with the Bidens following the events involving the FBI, and they likely approved of this targeted approach. Now we may examine what transpired and the extent to which Melania's dislike of visiting the Bidens became so strong. The United States Bureau of Investigations, FBI, conducted an unannounced search of Donald Trump's home on August 8, 2022. His Palm Beach, Florida Mar-a-Lago estate was searched by federal authorities while he was in New York. In a statement he released, he said that a large number of FBI agents had broken into his safe during the search and described the operation as an unexpected raid. Still, he remained mum about why the search was underway, and the FBI and the Justice Department, including its Washington, D.C. headquarters, took no action. Neither the headquarters nor the Miami field office offered any comments about the matter. According to reports, the Secret Service was informed many hours before the search warrant was executed, around 10 o'clock in the morning. On the dot, and the guys from Donald's security detail helped the cops get entrance to the mansion. According to reports, the search was on for much of the day and finished up in the late afternoon. The areas of Mar-a-Lago, including his personal quarters and offices, appeared to be the primary focus of the search, according to CNN. Federal investigators would have had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he owned property in Florida, and that evidence of a crime may be there in order to get the search warrant. According to what Eric Trump told Fox News, the search was conducted as part of an inquiry into files that the National Archives had requested. News organizations have been informed by multiple individuals close to the matter that this probe pertains to claims that he unlawfully removed sensitive papers from the White House. Even his lawyer, Christina Bobb, confirmed that the FBI had taken documents in the course of their investigation. Someone in the White House then claimed that they had no advance notification of the search, and a high-ranking government official told CNN that President Biden had no knowledge of the police presence at Mar-a-Lago until it was reported to the public. Things became more complicated at this point because, contrary to what the Trumps would have you think, this isn't totally true. But the fact that it occurred is significant. The fact that a warrant requires sufficient cause that illegal behavior has happened or is ongoing is the main reason it's a major problem, aside from the extra humiliation. An extraordinary image was portrayed when the government requested a federal court's consent to undertake a search of a house belonging to a former president. While details are sketchy at best, what little is known regarding the inquiry that resulted in the search warrant is concerning. According to the Washington Post, a group of documents were taken from Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence by the National Archives in January of 2022. The archives made public its discovery of materials tagged as secret national security information among the boxes kept at that location in February. An investigation into the unlawful transfer of boxes of secret information from the White House to Mar-a-Lago after his presidency was initiated by the Justice Department was reported in April by both the Post and the New York Times. Donald Trump's advisors denied any wrongdoing in February, stating that the 15 boxes confiscated from Mar-a-Lago by the archives contained keepsakes, presents, letters from international leaders, and other communications. The Post noticed the theft. A letter from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and a message from President Obama were also among these. The United States archivist, David Ferriero, who is retiring, told the Post in May how the probe into the missing papers began. The White House Office of Records Management told David about specific boxes that needed to be delivered to the archives, according to David. As we were moving materials from the White House just before the inauguration, those boxes hadn't shown up yet, he recalled. He recalled seeing someone carrying a white banker box as the Trumps left the White House, which made him wonder what was inside. This sparked an exhaustive effort to find out if any records had not been turned over to the archives. At the time, he said he didn't know if he had gotten all the data because the matter was still being investigated. The Post reported in February that the archives had a hard time getting documents from Mar-a-Lago. They said that at one point, someone from the archives had threatened to notify Congress or the Justice Department about the failure to cooperate unless Donald's team voluntarily turned over the documents. According to the Presidential Records Act and the Federal Records Act, if these records are handled improperly, it might result in criminal culpability. Experts in the field of law first expressed doubt that anybody might face criminal charges for breaking federal records regulations. There were worries about potential breaches of regulations regarding the mishandling of sensitive material when it was later disclosed by the Post that the boxes included clearly marked confidential documents. There were rumors that some of the papers stolen from Mar-a-Lago were classified as top secret, with even tighter access restrictions for an even smaller set of authorized authorities. Following this, archives officials asked the Justice Department to look into the matter. House Committee on Oversight and Reform Chairwoman Carolyn Maloney, DNY, said that following the Post's first report, her committee would investigate his document handling practices. She later said that the investigation was growing in scope because new evidence pointed to significant potential violations of the Presidential Records Act and other federal laws governing the preservation of federal records. The Post and the Times reported in May that prosecutors had begun contacting former Trump White House aides for interviews and had issued a grand jury subpoena to obtain the relevant documents from the archives, indicating that the investigation by the Justice Department was progressing. General Merrick Garland was definitely engaged, but whether Joe Biden knew about the planned raid is still up for debate. William Barr, who was the Attorney General at the time, instituted new guidelines for the launch of investigations into candidates for president or vice president on February 5, 2000. Any such investigations were required by this regulation to first have the personal written consent of the Attorney General through the Deputy Attorney General. In addition, the relevant parties had to be notified and consulted with, including the Assistant Attorneys General and U.S. Attorneys. In a memo released in May of that year, Attorney General Garland verified that this policy is still in force. Given that Donald had not officially announced his candidacy and that a search warrant within an existing investigation is different from initiating a new investigation, it is plausible to assume that Garland, Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco, and FBI Director Christopher Wray were all likely involved in the decision to move forward with the search warrant against a former president. Whether Williams' policy is applicable to this particular situation is unclear. It would be wise for the Attorney General to personally oversee such a monumental step, considering he has dropped hints about maybe running for president again. Once again, it is still not apparent why the disagreement over his record-keeping was deemed a criminal case instead of just an administrative oversight. Nobody knows for sure what the FBI was looking for or what it found when it searched. A possible justification may be that the purpose of the seizure was to retrieve sensitive information rather than to collect evidence for a criminal case. Whether or not the search was restricted to only documents pertaining to the classified records issue is unclear, though. The Justice Department was also looking into what Trump's team and associates did after the 2020 election. According to various sources familiar with the investigation, the Justice Department's probe into the attack on the Capitol on January 6, 2001, and the FBI's search of his home to obtain information about his handling of classified material are distinct as of the afternoon of August 9, 2002, as reported in the New York Times. However, while carrying out the search in accordance with the warrant, authorities may discover evidence pertaining to additional offenses. Assuming the search did in fact originate from the classified information disagreement, the circumstances surrounding its issuance remain fairly cryptic. Unless there are signs of espionage or intentional leakage, administrative matters are usually handled when secret documents are mishandled. There must be another major component at work for a disagreement between the National Archives and a former president over secret documents to reach the level of a court-ordered search and seizure. Although it is difficult to guess at these extra variables, one possible explanation is that the material's sensitivity required an immediate recovery. Like former FBI Director James Comey's description of Justice Department policy and practice when he announced the decision to drop the investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server, this is in a similar vein. Prosecutors must weigh several factors before pursuing charges, such as the strength of evidence, intent, context, and the historical handling of comparable situations. Comey stated that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case despite evidence of possible violations involving the handling of classified information. That the Justice Department would have relaxed its rules in a case involving a former president is therefore hard to fathom, lending credence to the idea that this case probably has elements beyond those of ordinary mishandling cases. You asked whether the White House could have been unaware of the imminent raid, and the answer is yes. Here's why. Based on what we know so far, it appears that the White House was unaware of the search, a claim shared by CBS News White House correspondent Ed O'Keefe. This is in line with the policies that have been stated by the Department of Justice and the White House. The White House will stay out of the Justice Department's investigations, according to former President Biden and Attorney General Merrick. I did not, have not, and will not pick up the phone and call the Attorney General to tell him what he should or should not do regarding prosecutions. Biden has stated emphatically, I did not, have not, and will not do that. Merrick has also stressed, I am not the president's lawyer. In July 2021, Merrick established a policy to govern interactions between the White House and the Justice Department, saying that the Justice Department will not advise the White House concerning pending or contemplated criminal or civil law enforcement investigations or cases, unless doing so is necessary for the performance of the President's duties and appropriate from a law enforcement perspective. At the same time, then White House counsel Dana Remus issued a similar memo, asserting that, outside of the national security context, and the Justice Department should have worked independently of the White House on this issue, which is perfectly consistent with the spirit of both regulations and the public remarks made by Merrick and Biden, even though both policies do permit certain exceptions, especially with regard to national security. It appears to be a simple problem, but Melania's attitude suggests otherwise. It might be her usual odd behavior. The homes they've owned outside of the Oval Office, though, are worth comparing. Most people know Mar-a-Lago as the Palm Beach home and private club of Donald J. Trump, but it is also one of the most prestigious properties in the U.S. It was designed in the 1920s to fulfill the dreams of a famous heiress who wanted a stately mansion in the European style. Originally, Mar-a-Lago belonged to serial billionaire C.W. Merriweather Post's daughter, Marjorie Merriweather Post. Send out. Legend has it that in the 1920s, she scoured the undeveloped parts of Palm Beach Island for the ideal piece of property that would put her home between Lake Worth and the coast. The estate was given the name Mar-a-Lago, meaning sea to lake in Spanish, when it was first discovered. It took 4 years to build this magnificent 17-acre estate, and by 1927 it was finished, with the main house securely anchored to the coral reef below using concrete and steel to make it hurricane and tropical storm-proof. She planned to include elements of Portuguese, Spanish, and Venetian architecture into Mar-a-Lago, drawing inspiration from her trips around Europe. Marion Sims Wyeth, an American architect, was responsible for the main building, and she hired Joseph Urban, a designer from Vienna who had worked with the Metropolitan Opera, to supervise the interior decor of the estate. The outside of Mar-a-Lago has fanciful animal themes that are still apparent today, including parrots, monkeys, ram's heads, eagles, and griffins, which were contributed by the Viennese artist Franz Barwig. From its observation deck atop the 75-foot tower of the estate, one may take in breathtaking views of Lake Worth and the ocean. According to a historic American building survey conducted by the Office of Archaeology and Historic Preservation in 1972, the house at Mar-a-Lago had 58 bedrooms, 33 bathrooms, a 9-hole golf course, a 1,800-square-foot living room, and a 75-foot tower. The ironwork was cast nearby, and the cypress wood used for the doors and beams was sourced locally as well. However, 3 boatloads of fossil-rich Doria limestone were imported from Genoa, Italy, to be used for the house's arches and sculptures. Marjorie shopped for 36,000 Moorish-influenced tiles from the 14th century for the estate's pink stucco front, and for about 20,000 roofing tiles in tones of black to salmon. Also brought in from a Cuban castle were 2,200 pieces of black and white marble for the floors. A one-of-a-kind architectural wonder for Palm Beach was born from the fusion of all these materials. The Society of Architectural Historians Archipedia published an article by John Stewart in which he states, "In the hands of the Viennese-born Urban, the Spanish Mediterranean Revival architecture, made famous by Addison Missner, characterized by barrel-vaulted roofs, loggias, fountains, tiles, metalwork, and arcades, is transformed into near-Jugendstil creations." This citation alludes to the 1890s German art movement known as Jugendstil. The observation deck and 75-foot-tall tower with a tile roof are 2 of Mar-a-Lago's most eye-catching features. The 2-story center family quarters were also designed with the intention of not making the main home look too intimidating. Overlooking Lake Worth and its surf-polished stone patio, the crescent-shaped arch is framed by 2 cloisters, while the rectangular facade faces the ocean. After finding these stones on Long Island, she patterned their arrangement after the Alhambra in Granada, Spain. According to Stewart, Urban organizes the spaces around the curved patio so that each gets its own special view and orientation, reminiscent of the layout of the Imperial Palace on Palatine Hill in Rome. This European style is especially noticeable inside, with Spanish lanterns illuminating the living room and cherubs carved into the enormous doors that lead into the spacious hall, as seen in a photo from 1871. Taking design cues from the 1,000-wing ceiling at the Accademia in Venice, replacing angels with sunbursts, the living room showcases a 42-foot-tall gold leaf ceiling. Embroidered panels from a Venetian castle adorn the walls, and 7 arches hold antique Spanish lights. An elevated veranda leads to a massive arched window that faces the water. Its size was so great that the freight trains carrying it from Pittsburgh had to detour via tunnels and under bridges. The enormous arched doors leading into the great room have cherubs sculpted into each of the 34 recesses panels. The dining room has a 4,000-pound inlaid marble table that Urban created after seeing ancient tables in Florentine galleries. The table was made by a team of 15 Italian artisans, and was inspired by murals from Rome's Chigi Palace. The Adams Suite, which is in the colonial style, is one of the bedroom suites in the estate. Others include the Dutch Suite, which features Delft tiles that her mother loved, the Spanish Suite, which has porcelain figurines in a tiled fireplace, and the Venetian Suite, which has crystal chandeliers. The Baby House Suite was created with a fanciful concept for her daughter, actress Dina Merrill, when she was little. It had squirrel-shaped doorknobs and pink flowers on twisting vines surrounding a beehive fireplace screen. By the time she died in 1973, after decades of entertaining distinguished guests, she had envisioned the estate becoming a winter White House and had bequeathed it to the United States government to use as a retreat for presidents and other dignitaries. The mansion had been designated as a National Historic Landmark the year before she passed away. Reports differ on the precise amount, but Donald J. Trump bought the property in 1989 for around $10 million when the government handed it to the Post Foundation due to upkeep and security difficulties. Trump hired interior decorator Buffy Donlin and Marjorie's son Richard Haynes, who was lead gilder, as artists in residence for the first renovations after the acquisition. With the use of 23-karat gold leaf, Haynes brought back the luster of fading murals. Among the alterations, he had his likeness placed in the library, exactly where hers had been for so long. Murals modeled by frescoes from the Chigi Palace still adorn the dining room, even though Mar-a-Lago's enormous original 36-person Italian marble table isn't used anymore. In 1995, Mar-a-Lago was opened as a private club after Donald Trump donated management of the main house to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, pledging to maintain its important elements. This necessitated more effort to manage the influx of guests and make room for more intimate dinner parties. He lived in one of the apartments on the property. Fort Lauderdale-based lead preservation architect Tamara Peacock started working with him in '97 to turn second-floor rooms into 10 hotel suites, build an event kitchen, plan a new party space, and make sure the whole thing was ADA compliant. The whole thing took 3 years. In her notebook, Tamara would later write, "He truly kept the character and historic elements intact while enhancing and illuminating the building for its next chapter." Since 1995, Regi Architects of West Palm Beach has been Mar-a-Lago's master planner and architect, adding buildings such as a spa and salon, tennis club, beach club, owner's quarters, guest house, helipad, and boat dock to the property. The Florida Trust for Historic Preservation recognized the firm's repair and revitalization work in 1998 with an award. Trump has kept a major gold motif throughout the estate's restorations and additions. A 2,000-square-foot ballroom, modeled after Versailles' Hall of Mirrors and costing $40 million, was opened in 2005 for the Mar-a-Lago Club. 11 crystal chandeliers and 24-karat gold sheets cover the ceiling, which Donald Trump spent $7 million on alone. His wedding to Melania Knauss was the first event to be held in the 700-seat Donald J. Trump Ballroom. With several renovations under its belt, Mar-a-Lago, which has basically become a winter White House, is gearing up for its 100th anniversary in 27 years. Despite all the changes, the European-inspired architecture never fails to awe and astound. Not only is Donald Trump a wealthy guy with an opulent taste in golden design, but the house also had a deep feeling of history, making it an even more remarkable masterpiece. In addition to the terrible events that have transpired on the Biden's house away from the White House, let us examine it. Located only 4 miles from Wilmington Center, the peaceful village of Greenville has a typical house listing price of $1 million. The Wall Street Journal reports that the Bidens paid $350,000 for the 4-acre parcel of land. At least $2 million is the current estimate for its value. There are 3 bedrooms and 4.5 baths in the house they built, according to credible sources. While his son Beau Biden was sick, Joe Biden considered taking out a second mortgage to assist support Beau's family, as he recounts in his 2017 book, Promise Me, Dad. He brought up the fact that President Obama warned him against the proposal when discussing it, offering to foot the bill instead. A Wilmington suburb, Greenville, Delaware, is home to the Bidens' principal house. On the terrace that looks out over the pond, Joe once entertained Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia. Not only does the property include a swimming pool, but it is also much more modest than Mar-a-Lago. He had previously enjoyed swimming at the Vice President's house in the U.S. Military Observatory. While waiting for word on Barack Obama's running mate selection in 2008, reporters from the Wilmington News-Journal set up camp outside his residence, playing frisbee on the lawn. His residence was open to the public more while he was a senator. Secret Service operatives have been stationed on the premises at all times during his tenure as president and vice president, frequently including bookcases, picture frames, and other mementos into his virtual events. He ran his 1920s presidential elections from his basement as a result of the COVID-19 epidemic. During his president, he took advantage of his Delaware property on a regular basis, spending about half of his weekends there and entertaining foreign dignitaries like as the Prime Ministers of India, Japan, and Australia. He furnished his house using the desk he used in the Senate as an exiting U.S. Senator. He has served as president and vice president out of his home office. There is plenty of space for workers and dignitaries to gather in the lounge, which has wood paneling and plush leather seats. Perhaps Melania's distaste for the Trumps' mansion stems from the fact that his small abode pales in contrast to their ostentatious mansion. Yet something shocking occurred there nevertheless. Attorneys for Joe Biden discovered secret documents in his garage and old office at the Penn Biden Center in Washington, D.C. in late 2002. They later gave over the records to the National Archives. The United States Attorney General Merrick Garland nominated U.S. Robert Hur, an attorney, will serve as special counsel investigating the possible misuse of secret documents. 6 secret documents were retrieved from Joe Biden's residence after a search by the Justice Department. According to Bob Bauer, Joe's personal lawyer, the search was entirely voluntary and uncovered documents from Joe's tenures as vice president and senator. Concerning Joe's storage practices for sensitive documents, Robert interviewed him on October 23rd. He went into detail about his home's layout and furnishings, describing himself as a frustrated architect, according to the transcripts. Joe was persuaded not to run for re-election to the Senate by reminding him that his wife had offered to pay for his architecture school if he dropped out. During the 2020 campaign, he also detailed how he set up a theater in his home to hold virtual events, because they were based in the basement. After an exhaustive year of research, Robert decided not to press charges against Joe, characterizing him as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. The report drew fire from both sides of the aisle, but it also hinted at the difficulties Joe Biden would confront in the 2000 presidential debates, which caused him to drop out of the race. It was pointed out how Joe Biden was handled differently than Donald Trump, and many thought it was unjust. Both homes were searched as if to recover misplaced possessions, but one was broken into as if to apprehend a criminal in the act. If Melania feels tricked, she may refuse Jill Biden's invitation to the Tea Party, and this might be a crucial indicator as to why. Being renowned for her protectiveness and love of privacy, Melania Trump may have felt a unique kind of invasion when hundreds of agents barged into her home. This might be her method of expressing her feelings because she seldom makes direct remarks about most subjects. Your thoughts on the matter are welcome. Post a comment telling us. I appreciate you tuning in. Press play on the video you're seeing to see more riveting content. To ensure you are alerted whenever a new video is uploaded, please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon.